Hi crafty friends, I'm here with you today to share a tutorial for how I made my little greenhouse. So you take the lid off and inside it's like an explosion box and it opens up to a little greenhouse filled with the beautiful new succulents from the Stampin' Up! Succulent range. So I'll show you how I made my greenhouse. So I started off with one of the window sheets, and this is cut at 8 1/4 inches by 8 1/4 inches. So once I've cut my window sheet, I need to do a little bit of scoring. The only measurement I need is 2 3/4 inches. Or 7 centimeters. Now, making sure my cutting blade is at the bottom, I'm just going to go down and up, and then I'm going to rotate and score all 4 sides at 2 3/4 inches. And this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have a grid of 9 squares, all 2 3/4 inches square. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove each of the corners. You can do that with a pair of craft scissors, or if you don't trust your hands, you can use your Stampin' Trimmer and just line up the point with your horizontal score line and cut. And this is what we're going to have. Let's see if that is better. So that's what we're left with. So now what we're going to do is just grab our bone folder and we're just going to fold along those score lines and burnish it down, and do that to the other 3 sides. Okay, put that over to the side. Now we're going to cut out 4 of these windows. Now I've pre-cut mine in Very Vanilla, and I have also gone ahead and used my hardwood background stamp and stamped these. So what we're going to do now, I'll show you on the die. You've got a number of very faint score lines that come through on your stamp. We're just going to cut our window, so there's the first score line along the second score line. And I found that if you place the top of your window cutout in line with this grey cutting bar, that cuts it perfectly. So flip it over, line up your window, your open space with the grey cutting bar, and cut. So I'm going to do that to the other 3 windows. Now save these little offcuts because we're going to turn these into little planter boxes at the end. Now, using our silicone craft mat and some fast fuse, I'm just going to run my fast fuse, and when it overlaps, just fold that over along the 2 wider sides. Now what we're going to do is simply line up, so we've got the widest side along the top. We're going to line that up with the top of our window sheet and glue it down. And it's going to look like that. So this window fits perfectly, and repeat that for the other 3 windows. Now if you have a little bit of excess glue, just run your finger along and that will remove it. Okay, so now we can go along and put on our window boxes. So with our Stampin' Dimensionals, we've got these edge pieces here. I just like to go along and snip them up. And we can use these on our window boxes. And you're just going to glue this onto the base of your window. So there's your box completed, so we'll pop that over to the side. So to create the lid for our greenhouse explosion box, I've taken another piece of Very Vanilla cardstock, and that measures 4.5 inches plus an extra 1/16, so just a tiny little bit more than 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches and the 1/16. And I'm simply going to score that at 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters on all 4 sides. And then I'm going to cut along the score line where they intersect, up to where they intersect, and just miter that corner a tiny little bit. Here, cut and then miter in the little box so that this section here are cut completely straight. Then turn it 180 degrees and do it again. Cut straight along that line, miter, so that is what you are going to have. Now as you can see, I've already embossed this. I've used the brick embossing folder, and what I've also done is I laid down some Sahara sand ink directly onto my embossing folder, and then I ran it through, and then I've just used my ink pad, the same one, and just dragged it along the raised areas to create that mortar distressed look. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold along those score lines and just burnish them. Just reinforce that fold with your bone folder. And then using your Tombow, just place a little bit of glue in your corner and just hold that corner closed for just a few seconds, and then move on and do the next corner. So after you've glued 2 of your corners, rather than doing them one at a time, pop your glue on both and then just glue them together. It's just a bit easier to maneuver. There you go. So just sit that aside to dry. So now to make our base. So this is removable. So exactly the same way that we made our lid. I've taken a piece of Very Vanilla. Now this one measures 3 3/4 inches by 3 3/4, and I have scored it at 1/2 inch all the way around, and you can see I've gone along and I've mitered my little glue tabs. So we're just going to fold and burnish those. I'm going to put a bit of colour down on the bottom of our platform. So the technique that I've used, I don't know if it is an actual technique, but I've got some regular cling wrap and I just screw it up into a ball. And what I'm going to do is I dab onto my ink pad and I just pat down onto my cardstock. So then I switch over. There you are. So it creates a really mottled effect, and which is exactly what I'm going for. So now I'm just going to go along and glue down my platform. Right, so there's my little platform. With my succulents, there's plenty of how-to videos out there at the moment for how to create your succulents, and I'd recommend that you create your flowers how you prefer, how you like. Now I've gone ahead and made up my flowers, and I've used a couple of different techniques. So using the stylus, I've gone along on some of them, and underneath I've rubbed the ball tool, and that's created that outward fold. And on some of them I have used the ball tool on the top of it to create that concave look. So now all I've got to do is to decide where I want to put my flowers and which ones I want to use. There's no rules here. The only thing I've got to keep in mind is that I want my flowers to stay within the walls of my window box. So I glue my big ones down first. Now just poke in a couple of the layering pieces, the little dendrils, and just curve them around how you like. Now I've used this particular flower, and I've gone and created some little rocks to go in my little garden. Now I've coloured this is Smoky Slate cardstock, and I've coloured it with my Smoky Slate ink pad using that cling wrap technique. And these are the little rocks that I have created, and I'll show you how I make one of those. So using the big end of the ball tool, I'm going to rub along the length of each of the petals. And once I've done that, I'm going to, in this center part here, I'm going to rub in a circular motion until my flower wants to curl in on itself. Now once I've got that, I bring all my petals together and I just give it a little bit of a squeeze, and that creates my ball shape. And then I just add a bit of glue on each of the tips and glue them together, just like that. So I'm going to pop a couple of my little rocks in place. So So using some tweezers. And there you are. So now what I do to finish off, I'm just going to press that acetate back into itself to give it a bit of tension, and then place my garden in. After we've placed our flower bed into our explosion box, we simply place the lid on top. To create a little extra detail, I have made a sailor's knot out of our thick baker's twine. Now to do that, we're going to measure the width of our box, and it's going to be 2.5 times, and then we're going to cut that. So now we're going to divide this rope into two. So to create our sailor's knot, one of your pieces you will fold in half. The other piece is going to come through here. So we go under, over both of those pieces, through here, and then we're just going to pull it tight. But I just want to make sure that I have an even amount of twine on both ends. And once we have that, we are going to pull that tight. And there is our knot. Now, just using glue dots, I decide which I want to have as my front, and I think I'll go here. And I'm going to place a few glue dots along the front, and then just randomly a couple around the border of your lid. Now our knot is going to sit in the middle, and then we will wrap our twine around. Keep going. Now when we come to the back, I'm going to cut straight down there, and then wrap these here, and again cut there. That's held in place with a glue dot, and here is our conservatory.